Hello everyone, this is Faheem Jackson, and it's episode 113 of my podcast show, In the Know. This podcast is aimed at trying to guide people through the world with a variety of topics. I'm also using this platform to ask questions and try my best to answer these questions with viewpoints of my world around me. The following episode, introduction speech, is for the topic of today. And that introduction speech is regarding whether society needs God or just ourselves. See, as time progresses, I often wonder, do we still need God in our lives? Because with progression in science, we have managed to find methods of living longer. So in a way, doesn't that make us a little godlike? But a less need for God is more than just dealing with things like illnesses, but also feeding ourselves and assistance in personal lives. I mean, come on, do we really need God for aid in tough times with so many people in the world? Well, people in the religious spaces would say that, yes, we do need God, because without society with a faith base, we have seen plenty of people lose hope. We all know what happens once hope goes down the drain. Bad things start to go through our minds, and we think of doing bad things to ourselves and others around us. But if there is a God, why would he let this happen? Well, he gives us all free will. So with free will, doesn't that mean we don't need him? As you can see, we're back and forth on this topic, so listen and enjoy. Is God a necessity? When observing society, we have to ask ourselves a question. Do we truly need God? Because with many of the masses, religion is something of the past that is going away rapidly. Now, no one wants to truly think that everything they have believed in for so long is irrelevant. Yet you can't help but to ask yourself, do we really need God? Because science has gotten so good. Do we need his graces? Once again, yet another controversial statement that will cause frustration and denials by many. So as you can see, there's always going to be a constant issue in trying to open discussion. Well, if God is not needed, then what is going to be the thing that replaces him? The opposite viewpoint would have to be the scientific perspective. And what would that perspective look like? Is science a better choice? See, science is such a great piece of information to fall back on, because we know so much about our human bodies because of science. And the reason why science is so tough for so many to lean on is that even with the knowledge, it's still so difficult dealing with the harsh truth. And science is straightforward, with no feeling attached to it. Yet there's no empirical evidence that religion is true. Science has saved people's lives directly. You detect sickness early on, and the hospital is able to treat it. Now you go on to live a productive life, because the science is an educated guess that has been worked over the years as truth. But there is a but. With what has been said, is science enough? The answer is no. How about leaning on the shoulders of each other? Because we have a world of 7.5 billion people. How is it possible that we cannot depend on others for aid? Well, here's how. When depending on each other. It's like I said before in the prior section, there are 7.5 billion people on Earth. So how is it possible so many people are alone in the world? Well, we have to satisfy our own productivity for our own survival. Then our significant others if we have them, and our children if we have them. We also have friends and family. Then you hear that there are lonely people in the world, and that's when it dawns on you. With so much going on in your life, how could you possibly make time for strangers? This is why we tend to turn to religion. Humans are way too undependable, so we turn to God. But let's assume for 1 second we don't turn to God, but to one another. That would mean your neighbors become secondary family. And to be honest, society used to be like that at one point in time. It takes a village to raise children mentality. In America, we call these the good old days. This meant there was less crime because everyone was paying attention to their surroundings, yet we still had the presence of God in our lives. And that is what leads me into the next section of this episode, and that is life with no God. What would happen if life existed without God in it? Here's how life with no God would look. Let's assume the world falls asleep and awakens to no belief in God. That would immediately mean thinking of God to start the day wouldn't exist anymore. Now people have to find something within themselves to get up and go to work in the morning. Sometimes not liking the work that one has to go out and perform. So what does one lean on and look to? Well, let's say you are a parent. The children now become a driving force in your life. If you're in a relationship, you and the other person can now fight harder for each other. But then again, People can be unpredictable, so your inner motivation to be great now keeps you going because you want to triumph over everyone else. On the other hand, not everyone has it in them to define greatness. So as you can see, losing that faith base could mean so many emotions and thoughts going through someone's mind. Thoughts of resilience and feelings of uncertainty, a willingness to fight and persevere, but also an inner dejection with no one to turn to. Now let's for 1 second assume that we stay with God and not forget about ditching God. What would life be like in that situation? Life stand with God. The current life in the world in which we live in is a life with religion. So how does life look if we were to fully stay with a religious base? It's a life of praise. It means waking up each and every morning, thanking God for waking up. It also means the same prayer for making it home after getting off of work, attending church on Sundays, and praising God for making it through the week, along with a congregation of others who feel the same way as you. But there's more if religion is kept around. You will have a more strict and stern society in some places, and other places a little more orderly. And it is this structure that could lead to people being disgruntled, or you have a group of people that feel a sense of solace, knowing that life will be structured. Now notice something. I said God. We live in a world with a lot of religious beliefs. So when I say we keep God around and live with God, which God? Because the three major religions, there's Islam, Judaism, Buddhism. Then there are the sects within the religion. But there are a lot of smaller religious beliefs as well. So with that said, whose religion will be the last standing? When observing religion, let's say enough time goes by to where one is left standing. Whose? See, that is a very controversial statement to make because no one wants to think of their religion as dying out. But we have always had faith bases that have come and gone. Who knows, 1,000 years from now, the three major religions or one could be left standing, while others wind up in a place like a museum. Then you would be able to visit and see firsthand civilizations centered around this belief and how people lived. You will see how they took it seriously or just lived for convenience. You will see which one was used as power over the masses and how religion was used to govern. Now, of course, if you are hearing this, you would prefer yours stand. It's confirmation in your mind that the faith is more legitimate, or that people were able to pull more strength and wisdom and understanding from yours than others. You might now think to yourself, how arrogant is that? To assume if yours is still standing after a lengthy period of time, it confirms something you believe to be true in your mind, when it could simply mean something else. Case in point, American churches have dealt with closures over the years. Reason being, people are working more on Sundays. This has been seen as a resting day for some. Isn't that ironic? Man resting on the seventh day. But a big reason is so many people have seen religion as antiquated. And that is a good lead in to the next section, how generations come to be will receive religious beliefs. Future generations choosing sides. As a future generation, how will the next group of people pick? Which direction will they go? The way of the Lord or the way of man? Well, why do you have to pick a direction? Okay, see, science is becoming better and better at detecting man and how life originated. Once we can fully pinpoint as to how we became as people and why we are who we are on this earth, it will change belief systems forever. Once you go down that road, there's no going back. Sure, the people in the faith base will say that your faith is being tested, but the next generation will just understand the new belief, which is the scientific facts. Religion slowly starts to go away. That is tough for so many to cope with, but if you look around America, churches are already closing down and pastors are trying to reach people via social media. And that is a great opportunity for growth, but still religion is in a tough fight because most social media is targeted in specific areas that might be seen as sacrilegious. Now, I see religion standing in the long term if it changes and becomes more of a template in how to live life from an inspirational standpoint. Fundamental views will absolutely have to change. So let's ask something. What happens if society picks wrong and the way of God is actually right? Let's say we dump religion as a global society, and then enough time passes to where we forget there was anything called religion as a practice. Key word, the thing we practice. Because we'll always study religion, especially if it goes away. We can now analyze its effects on past civilizations. But what happens when we live long enough without it, then realize we shouldn't have dumped it? That could mean tough times, especially because there's no real method for how we're supposed to matriculate back into religion. Sure, we have video and audio, unlike past civilizations, but with so much information in our current state, I don't think we could go back to religion. And what I mean by so much information, once a society is used to a way of life, we can't go backwards. Our current state clouds our judgment, so we get stuck. Stuck in, should we go back or stay where we are? Even with information that slaps down our feelings and emotions. But what about the other way around? The other way around meaning, what if society picks wrong? And we rely on ourselves when we should have picked religion. Meaning, we turn on the science and stay right the course into religion. But you know what? Time goes by and we realize, was religion right? Yeah, people, we find information that links our existence to religion being right. That would mean throw us way off, especially because the fundamental views of the Bible don't make any rational sense unless the fundamental views have been widely stretched beyond what is in the beginning. And the reason why the stories are so odd is because this has been over the past few thousand years is one big game of telephone. Let's say in the beginning that man was created in one way, then humans told stories over time, which made it seem over the top. See, scientists would say rely on nature and people, but people can't be fully relied on, which is why we go way of religion. So now we have to go back to the religion because we were wrong. So with this end statement, why we have to understand if society needs God or just rely on ourselves. See, living in a society where so much is driven by technological innovation and science, do we truly need God anymore? But we also have to encourage a strong faith base when living as well. And the reason being that we have to take both outcomes into consideration because we never know the full outcome of both decisions. It's interesting to observe both, especially the times we live in where people have things yanked from them during this pandemic. God has so much necessity in our lives, but the need for science, so the world doesn't have this tragedy again, is important as well. Is there room for both of the two to occupy the same space at the same time? Can we step away from God and have a good faith base? If we did, what would the faith base be based in? I don't know. It's just me personally. It makes more sense to pick one. To keep God around as a faith base or to move on from all religions? Well, from a fundamentalist standpoint, at least. Thank you for listening to In the Know. I'll be bringing you another episode regarding religion. The topic will be asking the question, why does the Bible read like a folklore, yet still has a firm understanding of man?